While I was in Toronto, Canada, I received a phone call that I failed the steroid test. Tested positive.
In 1990, Sean Ray failed a steroids test and instantly lost his title and prize money. Hidetada Yamagishi had it even worse because his steroid use put him behind bars.
2 months in jail is a long time, and it was really hard, but I learned a lot of things, so I want you guys to learn something from my mistakes.
Dallas McCarver did not survive at all, with an autopsy revealing testosterone levels 100 times the norm. These are the bodybuilders whose careers and lives were destroyed by steroids. Eddie Moisan. Eddie Moisan was living the dream. An NPC competitor from Pennsylvania, he finished 4th in the super heavyweight class at the 2002 National Bodybuilding and Fitness Championships and was featured in advertisements for Gaspari Nutrition. Training at Gold's Gym in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, Moisan was one of the bigger guys at the gym, reportedly squatting 800 pounds and benching 600, advising others on training and supplementation. He built a reputation as a knowledgeable figure in the local bodybuilding scene, the guy younger lifters went to for advice on getting huge. But that reputation would become his downfall. In September 2006, Pennsylvania State Police Trooper Gregory Emery infiltrated Gold's Gym on West Union Boulevard, following complaints about illegal steroid distribution among members. Emery posed as a gym goer seeking to bulk up, and Moisan took the bait. Over several conversations, Moisan recommended what he considered an ideal beginner cycle: 5 weeks of Dianabol, also known as methandrostenolone or D-Bol, followed by 5 weeks of Anavar, which is oxandrolone. He even admitted to the undercover officer that he used to sell steroids full-time, but had scaled back to selling only to friends after getting a stable job. The transactions happened right in the gym parking lot. In November 2006, Moisan sold 200 Dianabol pills for $500. 2 months later, in January 2007, he sold another 100 Anavar pills for $325 in the same location. When Moisan was arrested on February 29, 2008, he faced charges of possession of a controlled substance and possession with intent to deliver. He was arraigned before District Judge Wayne Mora and released on $50,000 unsecured bail. Gold's Gym immediately stated they would revoke his membership if convicted of selling on their premises. But here's the thing about Eddie Moisan: he didn't learn his lesson. By 2009, he'd actually expanded his operations, becoming part of a much larger network that caught the attention of the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office. The investigation was called Operation Roid Runner, a statewide probe targeting steroid importation from China and Mexico and domestic distribution rings. Phase 1 in November 2009 netted 10 arrests for trafficking worth over $170,000. Phase 2 focused specifically on Lehigh Valley networks, and Moisan was right in the middle of it. By this point, Moisan was sourcing steroids, 5 to 10 bottles at a time, from Brian Potance, a former Northampton County correctional officer who was ordering online from international suppliers. The transactions often occurred at a Bethlehem restaurant. Moisan would then supply the steroids to middlemen like Craig Johnson, an NPC promoter who owned Top Physique Nutrition and Promotions in Allentown. Johnson would broker sales to end users, keeping Moisan one step removed from the actual deals. Between August and September 2009, a confidential informant bought $1,000 to $2,010 worth of steroids from Johnson on 3 separate occasions at his Allentown business. Each time, Johnson was sourcing directly from Moisan, who would collect payments afterward. Arrested again in August 2010 as part of Phase 2, Moisan faced 3 counts of delivery of a controlled substance and 1 count of criminal conspiracy. During network-wide raids, agents seized nearly 300 bottles and 2,300 steroid pills. In a November 2009 interview with the Attorney General's office, before his second arrest, Moisan had actually confessed to supplying Johnson, admitting he'd begun sourcing from Potance that summer. He waived his preliminary hearing before District Judge Donna Butler in October 2010, and the case advanced to Lehigh County Court. He was returned to prison pending trial, as he was already incarcerated from the 2007 case. Moisan was eventually sentenced to 6 to 23 months in prison for the Gold's Gym sales alone. The Phase 2 charges likely extended his incarceration and probation even further. The case effectively ended his competitive career. While no formal lifetime ban from the IFBB or NPC was ever documented, those federations rarely enforce drug policies strictly. Natural and drug-tested organizations like the WNBF and INBA now reference Moisan's arrests when discussing all-natural events. He's effectively barred from any organization that uses polygraph or urine testing. By 2011, he was largely out of the spotlight, with bodybuilding forums speculating about his low profile due to legal fallout. Moisan's arrest was just one part of a larger crackdown on PEDs. In the bodybuilding world, another athlete caught in the crosshairs of law enforcement had an even higher profile, and his bust happened at one of the busiest airports in America. Hidetada Yamagishi. Hadetada Hyde Yamagishi made history as the first Japanese bodybuilder to qualify for and compete in the Mr. Olympia, placing 13th in 2007. Standing at just 5'5", with densely packed muscle, Yamagishi was known for his exceptional quads, back density, and conditioning. Sponsored by Gaspari Nutrition, he often posed down against giants like Jay Cutler and Ronnie Coleman. He'd become a trailblazer for the sport in Asia, proving that Japanese athletes could compete at the highest levels of professional bodybuilding. But on December 8, 2007, his career hit a wall, literally at U.S. Customs. Yamagishi arrived at Los Angeles International Airport from Japan, en route to California for training ahead of the 2008 IFBB Ironman Pro, Arnold Classic, and other events. During a random U.S. Customs and Border Protection luggage inspection, officers discovered anabolic steroids and human growth hormone in his bags. Yamagishi was detained immediately by El Segundo police, who handled airport jurisdiction. The seized substances read like a classic bodybuilding stack. Court documents detailed approximately 10 vials of testosterone enanthate, 5 vials of trenbolone acetate, around 500 tablets of stanozolol, better known as Winstrol, 5 vials of equipoise, and roughly 20 kits of HGH. The total value was estimated between $5,000 and $10,000, a quantity that prosecutors would argue suggested intent to distribute, though experts noted it was actually consistent with personal use for a pro, with his competition schedule of 3 to 4 shows per year. On January 8, 2008, Yamagishi was formally indicted in Los Angeles Superior Court on 9 counts, 5 felonies for possession and purchase of controlled substances, 1 felony for transportation of a controlled substance into the state for sale, and 3 misdemeanors for possession of prescription drugs without a prescription related to the HGH and ancillary compounds. Yamagishi was held at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Los Angeles, then transferred to the Federal Correctional Institution in San Pedro. Reports from visitors described harsh conditions, overcrowding, limited exercise opportunities, and significant language barriers, but Yamagishi reportedly maintained his physique through body weight. Workouts during his incarceration. His defense attorney, Sean Chapman Hawley, known for handling high-profile cases, argued the steroids were strictly for personal use. The defense was supported by declarations from bodybuilding experts, including coaches, who confirmed that the seized stack aligned perfectly with pro-level cycling protocols of 8-12 weeks for mass and conditioning. Character letters poured in from peers and sponsors. Hawley called the charges trumped up, noting the prosecution's overreach. The quantity was consistent with personal use. Hyde had no intent to sell, only to compete. The gambit worked. On February 6, 2008, a plea deal was reached. The felonies were dismissed, and Yamagishi pled guilty to 1 misdemeanor count of possession. His sentence, 65 days served, summary probation with no further jail time, and fines of approximately $1,000. He was released on February 14, 2008.
Today is February 15th, Friday. I just came out from the LA County Jail, which I spent 2 months. I appreciate everybody supporting me, and also appreciate to the IFBB, keep supporting me.
In his own words after release,
2 months in jail is a long time, and it was really hard, but I learned a lot of things, so I want you guys to learn something from my mistake. And future, I'm not sure yet which competition I'm gonna compete next time, but I promise, I'm gonna back, and hope everybody can still support me.
The IFBB issued no formal suspension. The federation rarely enforces anti-PED rules in open divisions where there's no testing. Yamagishi competed immediately after his release, going on to win the 2010 Europa Show of Champions and placing in the top 3 at the Olympia multiple times, including second in the 212 class in 2012. The case cost him roughly $100,000 in legal fees and temporarily affected his endorsements, but it actually boosted his fame in Japan, where he was seen as a persecuted warrior. Media deals followed. Yamagishi retired in 2022 after 17 years, citing family commitments. He married 10x Ms. Olympia Iris Kyle in 2015 and burnout from the competitive grind. They now co-own Powerhouse Gym in Las Vegas. No further legal issues have surfaced since 2008. While Yamagishi got caught at the border, our next bodybuilder got caught by the very federation he competed in, and the results were absolutely staggering. Petr Sukup. Czech bodybuilder Petr Sukup was a rising star in the European natural bodybuilding scene. Competing in WNBF-affiliated events, he'd built a reputation for his balanced, aesthetic physique, even passing polygraph tests designed to confirm drug-free status. But in 2014, his world came crashing down. During a WNBF-sanctioned competition in the Czech Republic, Sukup was selected for post-competition urine testing. The results were unprecedented. According to Wikipedia's compilation of doping cases, his sample tested positive for 10 different banned substances. The cocktail included clenbuterol, Lamotrigine, Pimorol, Primobolan, Proviron, Methamphetamine, Anavar, Winstrol, Decadurabolin, Halotestin, Oral Turinabol, and Dianabol. This wasn't a one-off mistake. It was a comprehensive cycle for bulking, cutting, and performance enhancement, with metabolites suggesting use over many months. Under WNBF anti-doping rules, the result was automatic and permanent. A lifetime ban to Sirsan from the Federation and all its affiliates worldwide. Sukup didn't contest the findings. His prior results were stripped, and any titles or qualifications he'd earned were voided. The case sent shockwaves through the natural bodybuilding community. Here was someone who'd publicly advocated for drug-free competition, who'd undergone lie detector tests, exposed as running one of the most sophisticated stacks ever detected in the sport. It raised uncomfortable questions. If he could fool the system for so long, how many others were doing the same? Sukup vanished from competitive bodybuilding after 2014, with sparse appearances in Czech media suggesting he's moved on entirely. The ban's permanence closed every door in the natural niche. Sukup's case remains a benchmark for multi-substance violations in natural bodybuilding, but he wasn't the only one using his day job to fund a side hustle in steroids. Our next athlete had one of the most trusted professions in America and used it as cover for dealing gear. Greg Whiteley. Greg Whiteley wasn't just a bodybuilder. He was a 12-year veteran of Dallas Fire Rescue, serving as a firefighter, paramedic, and EMT. In the NPC Masters division, he'd earned consistent placements, including wins at Mr. South Fork and top finishes at the Ronnie Coleman Classic. His most recent placement before arrest, second in the Masters Super Heavyweight class at the 2010 Heart of Texas Championship. But Whiteley had a side business. In summer 2010, the Allen Police Department launched an undercover operation following tips about steroid sales at gyms in the Plano-Allen area. An undercover officer posed as a buyer interested in gear, approaching Whiteley at Gold's Gym in Plano. Over several weeks, Whiteley allegedly sold 7 different types of anabolic steroids to the undercover officer in multiple transactions. Each sale involved handoffs in the gym parking lot, with Whiteley providing advice on cycles and dosages. On October 19, 2010, officers executed an arrest warrant at Whiteley's home in Allen, Texas. He was charged with 7 felony counts of manufacturing or delivery of a controlled substance, each carrying penalties of 20 years in prison and fines up to $10,000. Bail was set at $350,000. Dallas Fire Rescue placed Whiteley on administrative leave pending investigation. His wife publicly defended him, noting he regularly passed the department's random drug tests, but the undercover evidence, audio recordings, and bylogs was damning. The case was cited in 2011 articles about natural bodybuilding as an example of why drug-tested athletes avoid mainstream federations. Whiteley retired from competing, fading from the scene amid the stigma of his arrest. Whiteley's case highlighted how gym-based dealing could intersect with public service careers. But he wasn't the only bodybuilder caught up in Pennsylvania's Operation Roid Runner. Another pro, this one with an IFBB card, was about to learn that importing gear from overseas came with serious consequences. Brian Chamberlain. Brian Chamberlain turned pro in 2003 after winning the NPC North American Championships. At 5'3", with a competition weight around 180-190 pounds, the Westchester, Pennsylvania native was known for his compact, dense physique and exceptional arm development. He owned Fitness Extreme Gym and was building a coaching business on the side. But Chamberlain was also allegedly importing steroids and HGH from China, Hungary, and Pakistan via wire transfers. As part of Pennsylvania's Operation Roid Runner Phase 2, investigators tracked his connections to the same Lehigh Valley ring that caught Eddie Moisan. Arrested on August 19, 2010, Chamberlain faced 2 felony counts of delivery of a controlled substance and 1 count of possession with intent to deliver. The network-wide raid seized nearly 300 bottles and 2,300 steroid pills. Unlike some co-defendants who received extended sentences, Chamberlain waived preliminary hearings and likely resolved via plea. By 2011, he was free and pivoting to legitimate coaching at Ignite Performance Training Center, which he co-owns to this day. The IFBB issued no formal ban. Pros in the open division face virtually no testing, but natural federations permanently blacklisted him, and the case was cited alongside others as evidence of PED prevalence in mainstream bodybuilding. Chamberlain's case exposed how IFBB pros could operate import networks with minimal federation consequences, but not all steroid scandals involved arrests. Some happened right on the competition stage, and no case was more controversial than what happened to a young Sean Ray at the 1990 Arnold Classic. Sean Ray is one of the most consistent competitors in bodybuilding history, 13 Mr. Olympia appearances with top 5 finishes in 12 of them. But in 1990, the 24-year-old phenom became the first professional bodybuilder to fail a drug test at the Arnold Classic. The 1990 Arnold Classic was groundbreaking, the first major pro event to implement rigorous drug testing, using IOC-accredited labs that could detect oil-based steroids up to 8 months prior. Ray dominated the judging and walked off with the trophy and a $60,000 check, the biggest purse in bodybuilding at the time. Then came the phone call that changed everything. In his own words,
while I was in Toronto, Canada, I received a phone call that I failed the steroid test. Tested positive. And that being said, they held on to all the prize money until the test results came in, so I didn't have the $60,000. But what I did have was the Arnold Classic trophy, second one of its kind.
Ray tested positive for nandrolone. The IFBB stripped his title, and the $60,000 went to second-place finisher Mike Ashley, ironically known as the Natural. The hardest part, returning the trophy to his mother's house.
But it was a long walk into my mom's house, to that fireplace, explaining to her that I was a loser, feeling like a loser. And mind you, I was the only one that could deliver that trophy to Gold's Gym, a place I was celebrated, and a place that I trained regularly, and a place that they did not know what the hell I was doing.
Ray received a one-year suspension from IFBB events, but he rebounded, winning the 1990 Mr. Olympia's drug test and placing third, then returning to Columbus in 1991 to win the Arnold Classic again, this time keeping the trophy and $70,000.
So in 1991, I went back to Columbus, Ohio, increased the prize money to $70,000, and at 25 years old, I duplicated the feat of winning in 1990, kept the $70,000, got the Arnold Classic trophy, which is right here over my head. That's from 1991. Yeah. That's a 1991 Arnold Classic trophy. And I redeemed myself because at that point in time, they got rid of all the steroid testing.
Ray's case marked the beginning and end of serious drug testing in pro bodybuilding, but he wasn't alone in failing that year. What happened at the 1991 Mr. Olympia would expose just how widespread the problem really was. The 1991 Mr. Olympia. If Sean Ray's positive test was a warning shot, the 1991 Mr. Olympia was a full-scale catastrophe. Held on September 14, 1991 at Walt Disney World's Dolphin Hotel in Orlando, the event was supposed to continue the IFBB's drug testing initiative. Instead, it exposed just how impossible clean bodybuilding really was. According to reports from bodybuilding media and insiders, out of approximately 27 qualified competitors, 16 tested positive for anabolic steroids during pre-event screening. That's nearly 60% of the field. The implicated athletes reportedly included top contenders like Lee Labrada, Mike Christian, and Rich Gaspari, primarily testing positive for nandrolone, stanozolol, and boldenone. But here's where it gets interesting. The IFBB chose not to enforce the results. Rather than disqualify half the competitors and turn the Olympia into a ghost show, officials allowed everyone to compete. NPC President Jim Manion later admitted, the reality, the federation simply couldn't sustain drug testing without losing their entire roster. The result was a watered-down show. Physiques appeared softer, conditioning suffered, and defending champion Lee Haney won his 8th consecutive title, tying Arnold Schwarzenegger's record, but in a competition many considered compromised. By 1992, the IFBB had quietly abandoned routine drug testing. The experiment was over. As one insider noted, if they were going to continue testing, they would ultimately wind up with no bodybuilders. The 1991 Olympia proved that drug testing and pro bodybuilding were fundamentally incompatible, but while the IFBB looked the other way, some athletes from that era have since been more candid about what really went on, none more so than the legendary Frank Zane. Frank Zane. Let's be clear up front. Frank Zane was never banned, disqualified, or tested positive for anything. The three-time Mr. Olympia competed in an era when drug testing simply didn't exist in professional bodybuilding. But his case belongs here because of what he represents, the golden era's open secret. At 5'9" and 185-190 pounds, Zane's physique was a masterpiece of proportion and aesthetics. He's the only man to defeat Arnold Schwarzenegger on the Olympia stage. Known as the Chemist for his scientific approach to training, Zane built a legacy that still influences bodybuilders today. So did he use steroids? Over the decades, Zane has moved from vague deflections to something closer to soft admissions. In a recent interview discussing supplements and nutrition, when asked about hormones during competition,
I never relied on any of that stuff. I wanted to get that effect from supplements. And you know, when you take high doses of supplements, vitamins, minerals, enzymes, amino acids, you do get a drug-like effect.
Right.
But it's not as radical, you know. Plus, there are none of the side effects. Like one of the side effects of using anabolic steroids is your temperament changes, you know, your personality changes. People start hating you and avoiding you because you're like a bull out of a cage. So I didn't want any of that.
Modern analysts like Greg Doucette and More Dates estimate Zane likely ran very low doses, perhaps 200-400 milliliter primobolan plus 100-200 millimeter testosterone weekly during contest prep. By today's standards, that's almost nothing. In a 22 May 84 podcast appearance, Zane came closest to confirming specifics. Primobolan was popular because it didn't bloat you. That's all I'll say. It's the most direct he's ever been. Zane represents the golden era's approach: minimal doses, maximum aesthetics. But that approach would evolve into something far more dangerous, as the tragic case of Mike Menser would later illustrate. Mike Mentzer. Like Frank Zane, Mike Mentzer was never formally banned or tested positive, but his story belongs in this discussion because of how openly he discussed PEDs, and because his death at 49 sparked endless speculation about the long-term consequences of steroid use. Mentzer was a revolutionary, the 1978 Mr. Universe with a perfect 300 score, the first in history, and 1979 Olympia heavyweight champion popularized heavy-duty training, brief, intense workouts taken to absolute failure. He was a philosopher who quoted Ayn Rand, an intellectual who studied pre-med before dropping out to pursue bodybuilding. Unlike many peers, Mentzer was surprisingly candid about PEDs. According to interviews and accounts from training partners, his cycles included decadurabolin, primobolan, and dianabol, moderate doses by era standards. In a documented interview, he self-reported 400 milliliters deca every 10 to 14 days, plus 5 milliliters dianabol daily for his 1978 Universe win. Mentzer was also vocal about debunking myths. In interviews throughout the 1990s, he pushed back against roid rage narratives and infertility fears, while warning about liver and kidney risks. He called steroids a necessary evil for competitive bodybuilders, but advocated for low doses and short cycles. On June 10, 2001, Mentzer died of a heart attack at age 49. His brother Ray died 2 days later from stroke and kidney failure related to Berger's disease. The timing fueled speculation, but doctors cited family heart disease history. Their father had died at 57 from coronary issues. Mentzer had quit steroids roughly 20 years before his death. Mentzer's legacy endures through heavy-duty training, later adopted by Dorian Yates to dominate the 1990s. His openness about PEDs set him apart in an era of denial, but while Mentzer's doses were considered moderate, the sport would evolve toward extremes that make his protocols look conservative. No case illustrates this better than Dallas McCarver. Dallas McCarver. Dallas Big Country. McCarver earned his IFBB Pro card at just 21, the youngest ever at the 2012 NPC North American Championships. At 6'1" and competing at 260-300 pounds, the Memphis native was being groomed as a future Mr. Olympia. Coached by Chad Nichols, the man behind Ronnie Coleman's 8 Olympia wins, McCarver placed 8th at the 2016 Mr. Olympia and seemed destined for greatness. On August 22, 2017, McCarver was found unconscious in his Hollywood, Florida condo by his girlfriend, WWE star Dana Brooke. He was pronounced dead at 26 years old. The autopsy report, released November 28, 2017, sent shockwaves through the bodybuilding community. Cause of death: an acute cardiac event due to severe left ventricular hypertrophy, an enlarged, thickened heart. But the numbers were staggering. McCarver's heart weighed 833 grams, nearly triple the normal 300 grams. His liver and kidneys were enlarged. He had early-stage thyroid cancer, and his toxicology showed trenbolone in his system with testosterone levels that, when converted to standard measurements, appeared to be approximately 55,000 nanograms per deciliter, roughly 100 times the normal range, as analysts discuss the findings.
So if you look here, severe cardiomegaly, severe at the age of in his 20s, with left ventricular hypertrophy characteristic of steroid abuse. Severe. This is very unusual in somebody that age. And then he had a thyroid cancer, nephrosclerosis, which means he had what Fuad Abiad has now, which is the sclerosis of the kidneys, which happens to a lot of bodybuilders, unfortunately, over the years.
Rumors circulated about a death cycle allegedly designed by his coach, supposedly including 22 IU of HGH daily, 35 IU of insulin, 300 to 400 milliliters anadrol, and 2,500 milliliters of trenbolone weekly. Whether accurate or exaggerated, the protocols being discussed cost upwards of $5,000 monthly. McCarver had warning signs. He collapsed on stage at the 2017 Arnold Classic Australia from dehydration and exhaustion. He had asthmatic issues and chronic shortness of breath. At 26, his organs were failing. The autopsy explicitly listed chronic use of exogenous steroids and non-steroid hormones as contributing factors to his death. It was a stark warning about where modern bodybuilding's drug culture was heading, and how little protection athletes had from the consequences. Dallas McCarver's death remains one of the most sobering moments in bodybuilding history. At 26, with the world at his feet, he became a cautionary tale about the ultimate price of pushing the human body beyond its limits. Like this video, click the cards showing on your screen for more.